the people of Iran need hope because of the theocratic government there that has repressed so many of them and denied them that hope and opportunities for the future. And we know Iran is the source of most of the bad things that happen in the Middle East. I used to say it was the head of the snake, but I think it's really more the head of the octopus. When you look at all the various groups, whether it's Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, I mentioned all of the various terrorist organizations or proxies that operate on behalf of the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world. So I'm pleased to be here with so many of my friends who I got to meet years ago and continue to support you in your efforts in any way that I can. But thank you for letting me drop by and just say a few words. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn, for taking time out. We'll now resume regular order in the Senate. Thank you so much, and welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're so grateful. Let me begin my brief remarks by introducing myself and let you know how honored we are that you're here with us today. On behalf of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, I really am honored to welcome you to this Senate forum that is not only focused on the future of Iran, but also to share with you the enormous success that the global Iranian opposition under the leadership of the NCRI, and particularly Madam Maryam Rajavi, is achieving. And I am honored to serve as your moderator today. I'm former United States Ambassador Mark Ginsburg, who had the honor to serve as foreign policy legislative assistant to Senator Ted Kennedy, whose name adorns this caucus room in the Russell Building. I've been deeply involved with Iranian opposition initiatives, and I'm proud to say that the mullahs don't like me one bit, and have had a fatwa on my rear end for some time, but I'm still here and proud of it. I know all of you that have come from near and afar, share the goal to bring about an end to the tyranny of the mullahs and to usher in a new era of freedom, dignity, and prosperity for the long-oppressed people of Iran. And may I also take a moment to convey to my fellow Senate staffers a warm welcome for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Not only will you be rewarded with some enormously important remarks from a distinguished panel of speakers, but we're going to serve you lunch as well. And during the 90 minutes, you'll hear from many of the experts who have reputations as Iranian experts, including Madam Rajavi. You know, so much has changed in the Middle East in this past year, both outside Iran and inside Iran. And we actually convened a Senate forum 1 year ago today. In this very room, we were here. And here we are 1 year later, and look at how much has changed in the Middle East. The Iranian regime has never been so weak internally and externally. The organization of the mullahs is crumbling, and their vaunted terror axis of resistance in the Middle East is in shambles. Their economy is on the brink of collapse, and this regime continues to rot within and resorting to even worse brutality, particularly against opposition figures, including the internal opposition that is led by the NCRI and the MEK inside Iran. I need not share with you all of the numbers of executions that have been committed by the mullahs since they lost their war in the Middle East. But behind this once feared facade of the Iranian dictatorship lies a desperate group of emissaries that are determined to continue their axis of resistance throughout the Middle East. Our job is to accelerate the dispatch of these so-called mullahs and their emissaries who try to spit polish their shoes and offer token human rights improvements to impress foreign media. Ladies and gentlemen, that playbook won't work anymore. And not since the Iranian Revolution has the United States and its allies been accorded such a golden opportunity to help push the mullah cabal over the cliff. I can assure you that when that cliff falls from underneath them, the rejoicing inside Iran will be heard in every capital around the world. The destruction of the axis of resistance will help chart a new course that will prove successful to all interested parties, particularly the foreign policy of the United States. I'll have more remarks in the next few hours, but I want to stop right here and to call on your attention to watch a video presentation by Madam Rajavi, and after that I'll have the distinct privilege of introducing Secretary Ben Carson. So you'll see a video right now. Thank you.
Honorable members of the United States Senate, distinguished guests, thank you for your attention to Iran and for recognizing the determination of the Iranian people and resistance to overthrow the regime. Yesterday was International Human Rights Day. For the brutal rulers in Iran, this day is a threat to their regime. But for our people, it is a day to honor the sacrifices made for freedom and democracy. It is a day to continue the struggle to achieve human rights and a democratic future. The long suffering of oppressed people is reflected in valuable documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the United States Declaration of Independence. The same truth applies in Iran in its steadfast resistance to dictatorship. Thousands upon thousands of members of this resistance have given their lives for freedom. Our people have endured torture, displacement, and painful hardship. Iranian women have faced terrible discrimination and brutal injustice. All this suffering points to one solution: change in Iran through organized resistance and an organized uprising. At the heart of this solution is democracy, both the goal and the only way to achieve justice, progress, and a government by the people. The change we are fighting for will come through an organized uprising with resistance units inside Iran playing a central role. Because of this, we do not ask any foreign government for money or weapons. Our only request is that the international community recognize the Iranian people's struggle to overthrow a regime that has occupied our country for nearly half a century. After the fall of the religious dictatorship, we will enter a transition period. Our goal is not to take power for ourselves. Our goal is to transfer power to the people of Iran through a peaceful and democratic process. Within 6 months, there will be a nationwide election for a constituent assembly chosen directly by the people. This assembly will draft a new democratic constitution and appoint a transitional government to run the country until the constitution for the new republic is complete. The Iranian people support for this solution guarantees its success. This solution relies on an organized movement. The People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, with thousands of capable members and a democratic alternative, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, a coalition of different political tendencies, a wide network of supporters inside the country, along with young people seeking change, and the resistance units across Iranian cities form the driving force of the uprising. Ashraf Tiri in Albania is one of the centers of the PMOI. It includes 1,000 pioneering women, nearly 1,000 former political prisoners, and many respected men and women who are known and trusted in cities and provinces across Iran. A long line of Iranian experts and graduates inside and outside the country are the architects of a free Iran in the future. I must also stress the importance and value of Senate Resolution 145 supporting the residents of Ashraf Tiri. We deeply appreciate the honorable senators from both parties who have backed this resolution. Distinguished guests, the events in Iran, especially over the past 6 months, have swept away fake solutions and false alternatives for Iran's future. Today, only 2 real options remain: either the continuation of the current situation, religious fascism, terrorism, warmongering, and the regime's missile and nuclear programs, or real change brought by the Iranian people and their resistance, leading to a democratic, pluralistic republic. This situation is the result of conditions that are ready for the regime's overthrow. Khamenei has reached the end of the road. Every decision he makes is an attempt to escape an uprising and avoid being overthrown. He publicly rejects negotiation, but secretly, out of desperation, resorts to maneuvers to deceive the United States and Europe to buy time. More than 1,950 executions in Iran in 2025, the repeated death sentences against members of this resistance, and ongoing efforts to destabilize the region are all part of the regime's attempt to escape its inevitable fate. This regime has fallen to its lowest point in 45 years. Yet, it remains the main threat to global peace and security. For more than 4 decades, our resistance has warned that fundamentalism under the banner of Islam is the major threat to peace and stability in today's world, and that its epicenter is the religious fascism ruling Iran. The People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, the main force within the National Council of Resistance, has promoted a democratic interpretation of Islam. It has acted as the antithesis to fundamentalism and is the main barrier against this regime. Our demand is international firmness against this inhuman regime, including preventing the regime's sale of oil, half of which is in the hands of the IRGC, ending the presence of the regime's agents in Western countries, and recognizing the Iranian people's struggle for the regime's overthrow and the struggle of brave young Iranians against the IRGC. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for those wonderful remarks. I want to say a word about Madame Rajavi. I have had the privilege of meeting her and many of her supporters and allies who are around the world. I dare say that she is the 21st century's version of the Iron Lady. She is the #1 target of assassination attempts by this dreaded regime. And it is not by accident that she has risen to the top of their enemies list because of her leadership, the respect that she has earned from leaders around the world, not only because of her embrace of democracy, but her agenda that also has appealed to so many millions of people inside Iran. The more that you get to know Madame Rajavi, the more that you will share with me the moniker that she indeed is the Iron Lady of Iran. I would like to begin our program now by introducing our first speaker. And our first speaker is General James Jones. Jim and I have been friends for many years, but let me just share with you the many achievements in his career. He's a retired 4-star Marine Corps general, and he was the 32nd Commandant of the Marine Corps, and he also served as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, as well as National Security Advisor to President Obama. He's currently founder and president of the Jones Group and serves on the executive board of the Atlantic Council. His remarks are even more important than ever because his knowledge of the Middle East and his expertise at this point in time in the wake of Iran's continuing downfall is even more important than ever before. More importantly, Jim, we're grateful that you're joining us today. You've suffered a tremendous loss, and all of us send our heartfelt condolences to you and to your family. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be among friends and with you again today. I think this is maybe my 10th year association with all of you in the pursuit of democracy for Iran. To our head table, it's an honor to be with you today. It was also encouraging to hear the visionary message of Mrs. Rajavi. Once again, her extraordinary leadership has inspired not only countless Iranians inside and outside Iran, but also supporters of freedom across the world. We meet at a moment of extraordinary consequence, not only for the people of Iran, but for the peace and security of the entire world, and the Middle East in particular. For far too long, the clerical regime in Tehran has been the epicenter of regional conflict, terrorism, and instability. What many perceive as the regime's strength is a reflection of the international community's long-standing failure to hold it accountable. Tehran's destructive actions from the Red Sea to Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and the entire region are not signs of confidence, but desperate attempts to delay what we think will be an inevitable collapse. And today that collapse is accelerating. Across the region, the pillars of Tehran's influence are crumbling. The fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria has delivered a decisive blow to a strategy the regime spent decades and tens of billions of dollars trying to sustain. Hezbollah is on the brink of disintegration, and the Houthis in Yemen face devastating setbacks. The so-called axis of resistance, built over 40 years, is unraveling before our eyes. But nowhere is the regime weaker or more fearful than inside Iran itself. The economy is in free fall. The rial has plummeted to its lowest level. To put things in context, in 1981, 2 years after the mullahs took power, 78 rials would buy you $1. A decade later, in 1991, it required 511 rials for $1. A decade later, in 2001, it raised to 6,200 rials. And today, it rose to 254,000 rials in 2020, excuse me, and then today it's 1,250,000 rials for $1. It's incredible. Inflation is suffocating the people in Iran. Corruption is systemic. Shortages of food, medicine, and especially water threaten Tehran itself. And energy have become daily reality, and lack of energy have become daily realities for millions of people. And remember, as many of you here know, Iran is not a poor country. It sits on the second largest gas reserve and the fourth largest oil reserves in the world, while having a very potent and educated population. Yet nearly 80% of the Iranian people live below the poverty line, and the reason for this is the corrupt theocracy ruling Iran, period. And in response, the Iranian people have risen across every sector of society: bazaar merchants, retirees, teachers, nurses, communications workers, and countless others demanding dignity and justice. Yet the regime's response to those demands is violence. This year alone, 1,932 Iranians have been hanged, including 56 women, the highest number in more than 3 decades. A staggering 2,632 executions, including political prisoners, have taken place under President Masoud Pezeshkian since he took office in August of 2024. This is an unprecedented figure for a man marked to the world as being moderate. 18 activists now sit on death row for alleged cooperation with the main Iranian opposition movement, the MEK. They include a 22-year-old elite university student, a 30-year-old boxing champion, and a 67-year-old mother whose only crime was seeking a future free from tyranny. These cases represent the face of a regime terrified of its own people, terrified of organized resistance, and terrified of truth. But despite this brutality, the Iranian people have not backed down. Across the country, resistance units affiliated with the MEK have become the living heartbeat of defiance. Young men and women risk everything every single day to challenge the dictatorship and to keep alive the hope of a democratic future. And contrary to the false narratives promoted by Tehran and its lobbyists, the Iranian people have made clear that they reject both the failed dictatorship of the Shah and the tyranny of the mullahs. They long for one future, a democratic, secular republic where sovereignty belongs to the people. This vision is embodied in Madame Rajavi's 10-point plan, which you all should have memorized and have great familiarity with. This has garnered remarkable international attention and support. It offers a roadmap for a pluralistic, free, and fair elections, equality for men and women, separation of religion and state, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, press, and assembly, an independent judiciary, and a non-nuclear Iran at peace with its neighbors. Who could object to something like that? And support for this vision, I'm happy to say, is rising in the United States, but we need to do more as compared to our European friends who have embraced Mrs. Rajavi in capitals around the world, speeches to the European Union and the like. We need to do more here in order to combat the wrong-headed historical perceptions of the history of the MEK. But I'm happy to say that this year the support is rising in our own country. In the Senate, as was mentioned, Senate Resolution 145, supported by 19 bipartisan co-sponsors, echoes the support of over 4,000 parliamentarians around the world and 130 former world leaders for Mrs. Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan for the future of Iran. This resolution affirms the Iranian people's right to determine their own destiny and endorses a free, democratic, non-nuclear republic, and calls on our government to ensure the rights and freedoms of 3,000 freedom fighters in Ashraf III in Albania are protected and upheld. Similarly, in the U.S. House of Representatives, House Resolution 166, led by a bipartisan majority, also acknowledges the role of the resistance units in confronting the IRGC, and it rejects both theocracy and monarchy as unacceptable futures for Iran. So these congressional resolutions demonstrate that the real alternative to the regime is not chaos, it's not monarchy, it's not fragmentation, but a structured, organized, democratic coalition capable of leading Iran into a new era and rejoining the family of civilized nations in the world. For too many years, the West has cycled through policies that centered on the regime and totally ignored or harmed the Iranian people. Engagement, containment, negotiations, and the disastrous appeasement that enriched the IRGC under the JCPOA. Yet none of these efforts succeeded because the US and Europe failed to recognize the missing factor, and that is the Iranian people and their organized resistance. It is the Iranian people, not appeasement policy, not foreign powers, which will bring change. It is their struggle, not diplomatic bargaining, that will shape their future. And it is the responsibility of the international community to stand on the right side of history. A unified Western policy of maximum political, economic, diplomatic pressure on the regime and standing on the side of the Iranian people is essential. Most importantly, the world must recognize the right of the Iranian people to resist tyranny. It is to the interest of the free world to see those who have spent decades fighting the repressive rulers of Iran and those who envision a free, non-belligerent, non-nuclear republic of Iran as our allies, and that we treat them as such. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us that, and I quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice," unquote. For the people of Iran, the arc is bending now, not slowly, but visibly. It bends through the sacrifices of young resistance units in every province. It bends through the freedom fighters in Ashraf III in Albania, who are symbols of resilience, commitment, and resolve. It bends through the inspiring leadership of Maryam Rajavi. It bends towards the unwavering conviction of the Iranian people. And it bends through the international support that is growing stronger every day. So, ladies and gentlemen, our task is pretty simple. We need to ensure that our policies reflect our principles. We need to stand with the Iranian people, not with their oppressors. We need to embrace the democratic alternative, not the false narrative promoted by Tehran and its allies. That there is no alternative, and to lend our full moral and political support to a nation that is fighting for its freedom. History is watching. The time for clarity is here. The time for courage is here. And the time for a free, democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iran is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, General Jones. And thank you so much for your kind words, your support. It means so much to everybody in this room and those who are listening. And I know that Senator Shaheen is about to arrive. And before we call on our next speaker, I wanted to at least issue a challenge, not only to my friends in the executive branch, but also in Congress. Here is Senator Shaheen. So I will not, step on more remarks. Senator, thank you. Let me just make a brief introduction. Okay. Good. You know, folks, I've had the privilege of knowing Senator Shaheen and respecting her leadership in the Senate, as well as a great staff that she has. Why are you leaving us? We can't afford to lose you.
I'm getting old.
Oh, no, you're not. Senator Shaheen took office in 2009. She's got another 3-4 terms left. But unfortunately, she did announce that she was not seeking re-election. But in the career that she's had in the Senate, not only has she achieved an enormous amount of worldwide respect, but the admiration of all of us in Washington who've had the privilege of working with her. As a senator, as the ranking minority member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as a leading senator that helped forge consensus across the aisle, she is going to be missed. And one of the reasons why we are going to miss her so much is her leadership on behalf of the cause that we hold dear, and that is, of course, free Iran. You took the leadership role in being the lead sponsor for Senate Resolution 145. And those of us who know that those decisions aren't easy because they require work and they require support and they require the conviction and temerity of your constituents to understand why you're supporting a free Iran. And we want to thank you, and I'd like to turn the podium over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that generous introduction and for your nice call out for my staff who do a great job. So I really appreciate that. And for the work that you all do for a free Iran. You know, we've had big changes in the Middle East in the last year. And there's a real opportunity across the whole region for a different future, a free and democratic future. And wouldn't it be great if we can make sure that Iran is on that list of countries that have a free and democratic future? I am always struck by the purpose that brings you all together for these events. Each time we meet, you give a voice to Iran's democratic future, and you ensure that the world hears the truth. I know that's not easy. Despite the regime's loss of influence in Syria after Assad's fall last year, despite the direct strikes by Israel and the United States on Iran this summer, and despite Iran's crumbling economy, the regime in Tehran has not stopped making nuclear threats or supplying Russia's war machine or imprisoning its people. It has not stopped conducting mass executions and crackdowns on political prisoners. It's not stopped its campaign of gender-based discrimination and violence. And that is why this week's U.S. deportation flight sending Iranians back to Iran was so concerning. And while it's not clear whether those aboard voluntarily accepted deportation or whether they were forced onto the plane, what is clear is that their return to Iran puts them in grave danger. Many reported being called in for interrogation by the intelligence wing of the Revolutionary Guard Corps. And since the revolution in 1979, the United States has been a refuge for Iranian dissidents, for religious and ethnic minorities, for members of the LGBTQ community. We should be protecting Iranian asylum seekers from deportation, including the residents of Camp Ashraf 3. We should also be expanding support for Iranian women activists, something that I know everybody in this room supports. We should be boosting funding for documenting regime abuses, and we should be increasing sanctions on human rights violators in Tehran. The Iranian people deserve a secular, democratic Iran that is free from authoritarian rule. That is also in America's interests. We stand with you in your efforts, and we will continue to partner with you in this fight for democracy, human rights, and justice. I will continue that work as long as I am in the Senate, and I expect to continue it after I leave. So thank you all very much.
As to my friends in the Senate, I want to ask you the following, because all of us are advocating for a free Iran. But we need to do more than just advocate for a free Iran. We need to have the Congress and the administration on the same course. It's not enough for us to call on an overthrow of the mullahs. We've got to give the Iranian people the opportunity to do so. You know, I'm old enough to remember what we did during the Cold War. And what we did during the Cold War proved so successful in helping to promote regime change in Eastern Europe. And like the Poles and the Czechs and the citizens of the Baltic republics who benefited from what essentially was America's arsenal of soft democratic power, we really need to seize the initiative on behalf of the Iranian people and their united global leadership opposition to provide them the same tools that we provided the opponents of Soviet communism. Now, there are friends of mine in this administration who hope that there could be some grand bargain with the mullahs. Let's put it this way, there's no evidence whatsoever in the last 20 to 30 years of dealing with this regime that they honor one word, one commitment, one assurance. They only know one thing, and that is to sweet talk their way into more terrorism. I urge my Senate staff colleagues, and indeed anyone from the administration who may be listening, to consider formulating a new Iran Freedom Act, charging the United States to innovatively borrow from the tool chest used by previous administrations during the Cold War to systematically destabilize this rapidly decaying foundations of this regime. Now, that doesn't mean I'm calling for military boots on the ground. No, I am not. So what are the types of tools that we can propose here and which we intend to propose? I just see that Senator Gallego is now here. I'm going to stop my remarks. Okay? Please, welcome. I have to follow my own rules, Senator, which is when someone like you shows up, I shut up. Okay. You'll hear more from me, and I have the privilege now of introducing Senator Ruben Gallego. Senator, I don't know how much fun you've had so far in the Senate since the election. As I can only tell you the Senate is grateful that you're here. As a former longtime staffer in the Senate, it's great to meet you. You served in the Marine Corps with admiration and distinction and courage and bravery. And as you embark on your career in the Senate, the fact that you have embraced the cause of a free Iran and of getting to know the National Council of Resistance of Iran and its advocates, and as well as hopefully you'll get the chance to meet Madam Maryam Rajavi, the head of the NCRI. We're grateful that you took time out of your schedule to be here, and I welcome you up.
Thank you. And I apologize for doing a hit and run, and I don't have prepared remarks. But you know, something that it's something I've been engaged in actually since my time in the House, and I had the privilege there of also serving on the Armed Services Committee and really understanding the full scope and threat of the Ayatollah and his regime. And beyond the threat of what he is, the other thing to important is like we should remember what the Iranian people are, right? They are like any other people in this world. They're humans. They want to be free. They want to worship in freedom. They want to speak without any threat. They want to be everyday people without the overbearing government trying to crush them. And anytime we see that type of movement, anytime we see that type of resistance anywhere in the world, as Americans, as peace-loving people, and people that do believe still in liberties, we should continue to encourage that community to survive, to fight, and hopefully eventually to change the direction. Because there is a great tomorrow coming for Iran. There is a great tomorrow coming for both of our nations in a friendly way, unlike what we see right now. But we first have to believe that the Iranian people deserve democracy and deserve liberty. And with that, we should do everything we can to help propel that forward. And so I am glad to have continued doing whatever I can first as a member of Congress, and now I'll continue that as a senator. And thank you for all of my friends here that I consistently see everywhere. You're kind of like second family to me at some point. Instead of Iranian food, I'm going to start feeding you some of the tacos from Arizona. But please continue your advocacy. Because the Iranian people deserve that liberty just like anyone else in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gallegos. How fascinating that he just got elected and he's completely embraced the cause of Senate Resolution 145, the challenge of helping to provide democratic freedoms in Albania for those of an Ashraf, and most importantly, to serve as an inspiring new leader on behalf of a free Iran. I would like now to introduce our next speaker, who's been a pioneer on behalf of the NCRI and Madam Rajavi's 12-point or 10-point democratic plan. He's been a supporter of the MEK and NCRI for many years. Senator Roy Blunt is a respected statesman who represented Missouri in Congress for over 26 years, including 12 years in the U.S. Senate and 14 years in the House of Representatives. He was only two Americans ever elected by colleagues to leadership positions in both chambers. And he has served on key roles not only in healthcare, but national security, et cetera, and was chair of the influential Senate Rules Committee. Now, Senator retired in 2023, but he remains active in public and international policy in many capacities. And most importantly, he has provided enormous leadership in the United States on behalf of a free Iran. So, Senator, we're grateful that you're joining us today, and I welcome you to the podium.
Thank you all. Thank you all. I've been at every one of these since the first one. I don't think we had Persian food at the first one because Capital Catering provided the food. And Capital Catering may be good at lots of things, but Persian food, as it turned out, wasn't one of those things. And so I wrote a letter to the chairman of the Rules Committee saying we should exempt the rule on capital catering for this event so we could have Persian food. And since I was also the chairman of the Rules Committee, this went very well. Anytime the Senate. Also say we're pretty much at the point in this event where almost everything's been said. This is a Senate rule. Everything's been said, but not everybody's said it yet. But repetition is not a bad thing. I was a history teacher. I was a university president. I was in the Congress for 26 years. And frankly, I never got tired of saying the same thing until I became convinced that everybody understood what we were talking about. And that almost never happened. You know, if when you all leave, you could say, well, all those speakers said the same thing, and here were the three most important same things they said, we'll know it was a successful event. But we get to be here, get to hear Madame Rajavi, who I haven't met in Paris, and I didn't meet here, but I did meet in Albania. Got to hear Madame Rajavi talk about this continued effort to secure freedom for people who are willing to work for their own freedom, and also freedom for a non-nuclear Iran. The level of success has not been what we'd want it to be yet, but as others, particularly Senator Shaheen, just said, the last year has brought an incredible change in the environment where we hope this change will occur. The regime has never been so weak. The regional proxies who have been tools of the regime are almost, at least temporarily, out of existence. Now, bad things have a way of coming back. We should take advantage of that moment when many of those bad things are where they should be, which is off the scene of real activity. The Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the biggest regional state ally in Syria of Assad, all permanently or temporarily gone. Frankly, they've all paid their price they should have paid for their despicable behavior. And the $2 trillion effort that Iran has made to become a nuclear tyrant appears to be a gamble that may never pay off. You know, President Trump made a courageous decision. He understood with what had happened with Israel's efforts and the capacity that we uniquely had. He understood how vulnerable Iran was and how vulnerable it would become. And so those strikes made a huge difference. And by the way, who was it that told our government about those strikes? It was August of 2002, and the NCRI, I'm sure with the active assistance of the MEK, were the first two people that came forward and said, these two facilities have been built, they're about to become operational, and the Iranians believe nobody will be able to eliminate those facilities until they have nuclear capacity. That did not happen. In spite of the weakness of all of those things I mentioned, in Tehran, oppression continues, executions continues. Just last month, over 300 people were executed in Iran. Mostly young people, mostly people whose futures have been lost, whose families have been changed forever. And why were they executed? Because they were willing to stand up and speak up and do what they could to try to see that that system of oppression is not allowed to continue to last. The Iranian people are not giving up in Iran, and we should not give up outside of Iran. You know, there are many people here in this room today that I've seen repeatedly in the Capitol. I've seen in some of your homes in Washington. I've seen in your homes in Missouri. I've seen in some of your homes in California. Looking at one of my California hosts right now. And we can't give up, particularly since people who are there aren't giving up. The MEK is certainly not stepping back. The MCRA, as the Parliament in exile, continues to look for elected officials and governments. And we don't always need the entire government to be able to say, this group in the United States Senate, this group in the British Parliament, this group in wherever have stood up and said they are for us, just like this resolution that's being talked about for several times today. You know, for 3 decades, the regime has held the title of the world's leading sponsor of terrorism. This is a title nobody should be able to hold and keep. And they are weaker now in that title than they've ever been, but they are strong, just as strong as they've ever been in repression and fear and doing what they can to make people do what they're told, and hopefully this constant surveillance, all the things that should not be tolerated in a free society are there because it's not a free society. It's time to do what we can to make a difference. When I came to the Senate 15 years ago, I came with a real concern about what was happening at Camp Liberty in Iraq. You know, Camp Liberty, people who were fighting in Iraq for liberty for themselves and also a future for Iran, willingly gave up most of their means of self-defense on the basis that the United States guaranteed their protection, and we were not able to fully do what we had promised to do. So I came to the Senate not only with a burden for people who were willing to fight for themselves, and we'd said, if you'll step back in this moment of crisis in Iraq, we'll protect you, we'll secure you, we'll put you at this place, we'll call it Camp Liberty, and you'll be safe. And they were not. We were not able to do what we said we were going to do. And so for those people who had done everything they could, we needed to find some place for them to go. And we talked to people all over the world, countries all over the world. Could they come here? Countries that had Iranian populations already there, could they come to your country? Finally, Albania appeared to be willing to take those 3,000 people from Camp Ashraf. And I said to the Albanians when we were talking to them, if you'll take them to Albania, I'll come and visit in Albania. And so, as Senator Cornyn mentioned earlier, in 2017, we went to Albania, we met with the government leaders, we went to the camp and spent time with the 3,000 people at the camp. But because we spent so much time with the president of Albania, we were a little late getting to the camp. And didn't hurt, by the way, that the president of Albania knew the next place these United States senators were going was Camp Ashraf. And we went to the camp, we were just a little bit late, and so one of the unusual things of the day in our large vehicle, wasn't quite a bus, but almost a bus, had this big red carpet going from the gate all the way to where the meeting room was. And at the camp, they decided we want to maximize the time we'll have to visit, so we'll just drive the bus down the red carpet. Now, buses don't normally drive down the red carpet for a good reason, but we drove down the red carpet that day, had a chance to visit with the people there, and by the time we got back to the United States, the Albanian government had decided we can allow the creation of a new camp in a much better location and with much more freedom, and that's how Camp Ashraf 3 was built. That freedom didn't last for as long as it should have. You know, the last 5 years, a lot of the freedom that was originally there in the camp have gone away, continuing to try to fight for that. Hopefully, the Trump administration, which was very good on this issue in the first administration, and obviously has had their hands full the last 11 months, hopefully that we'll be able to find a way to get them attentively looking at this issue and the importance of example and freedom in this issue just like they did before. We didn't have that kind of interest. In fact, the past administration was looking for every way they could find to get the Iranians to do other things that we wanted to do. And the Iranians, one of the things they said, well, we're concerned about these people that we think are terror groups because they terrorize a government that's repressive and unfair and always pushing. So we need to continue to do what we can for that effort. We need to continue to do what we can to help people who are still in Iran fighting for freedom. One thing we definitely, as I said last year, before the last year of activities have happened, one thing we definitely shouldn't do is bargain with the Iranians on the basis of, my concern then was and still is, well, we'll leave you alone if you'll leave the rest of the world alone. That should not be an agreement we are willing to achieve. We should be totally committed to a free Iraq with free people who are treated freely, with women who are treated freely, with young people who are treated freely. You know, this is like the youngest population in the world in what may very well be the oldest civilization in the world. The value of that civilization, the value of that continued example to the world that Persia set for a long time needs to be combined now with the freedoms of this century. I'm glad to be here to be part of that. I'm glad to see all of you again. There is so much work to be done, but the moment is as good as the moment has ever been to successfully get that work done. Thank you for letting me be here with you today.
Now, Senator, you just showed the rest of us how to basically take 6 minutes and wrap it into the most comprehensive proposal of ideas that all of us can embrace, and you've given us some inspiration with your remarks, and thank you. I now have the privilege of introducing the Honorable Heather Nauert. Secretary Nauert is a respected foreign policy expert as well as a former diplomat. She served as spokesperson of the U.S. State Department, acting under Secretary of State for Global Messaging and Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs. Many of you have seen her contributions as an expert commentator on TV, on ABC, on Fox News. She's currently a fellow at Georgetown University, and most importantly, she brings a perspective as a woman to the cause of freedom in Iran that we desperately need more voices from in the United States. So Heather, welcome. We're glad you're here with us. Please take the podium.
Thank you, everyone. It is a real honor to be here with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a privilege to stand with so many who care deeply about freedom and human dignity. In my years as a journalist and later at the State Department, I traveled to places where these ideals were tested daily, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Burma to Ukraine. I met people who wanted the same simple things that all of us want: to raise our children without fear, to worship freely, and to live with dignity and freedom. No matter where I went, I heard the same quiet message repeated in country after country in many different languages. People want to be free from terror and oppression. It's that simple. And it is our God-given right. This truth is being lived out today in Iran. Across the country, women are leading a movement for liberty that began on the streets and continues in homes, in universities, and even in prisons. So many have paid a terrible price for their courage. Many have been beaten, imprisoned, or, as I learned today from Senator Blunt, 300 alone, executed last month alone. 300. Think about that. and every young woman in this room cares about this issue, but you need to be talking to your friends about this issue. Because if we don't stand up for the women of Iran and others fighting for freedom in Iran, we don't deserve to live in a free country here at home. Think about that. So many remain confined in Evin prison, and so many still find ways to resist and maintain hope. I've read the stories about mothers who whisper to their daughters that freedom is worth the cost, of women who refuse to cover their hair, even though they know the consequences. Just this week, organizers of a marathon were arrested because several runners did not wear the hijab. Journalists and students are still finding a way to share their news of what is happening inside their country, and they're so incredibly brave. The bravery reminds me of the fight for freedom is not an abstract ideal. It is a lived experience, often carried forward by women. The opposition movement's leadership reflects this spirit. Maryam Rajavi's vision, and loved hearing from her earlier today, expressed in her 10-point plan, speaks to values that Americans across the political spectrum, different parties, care about: universal suffrage, free elections, and equal participation for women. Also a secular state, and an Iran that lives in peace with the United States and the world. Giving power to the people, not the mullahs, she said earlier. These are not partisan principles, they are human ones. And it's incredible to see Republicans and Democrats working together on this issue here in Washington. During my time at the State Department under Secretary Mike Pompeo, I think you all know him, we understood that words from Washington echoed across the world. In 2017, when we withdrew from the JCPOA, we did so because Iran had violated its commitments. Sanctions followed, and the regime's ability to fund repression and terror was sharply reduced. Those measures weakened the regime's reach, but they did not end the suffering of the Iranian people. What we need now is a renewal of American clarity. America's strength has never rested solely on our military power, as our generals and others will know that in this room. It also rests on the power of public diplomacy and our ability to tell the truth and give voice to those who are silenced. When I briefed the press from the State Department podium, we were able to use that platform to highlight voices of people who are fighting for freedom in places like China, Venezuela, and also Iran. This kind of public diplomacy matters. Today, the State Department's regular briefings have become far less frequent, while nations such as China and Russia expand theirs and shape international coverage. As a result, America's perspective is lost in fragile parts of the world where our message matters most and where people need to hear America calling for dignity, freedom, and human rights. Now, President Trump's new national security strategy recognizes that America's strength depends not only on force, but on the power of ideas. Iran has sharply increased its spending on propaganda and disinformation campaigns, joining both China and Russia in working to shape global opinion and suppress the truth. The United States has its own tools, including Radio Farda, Al-Hurra, and others, which continue to operate, though at a reduced capacity. Congress has a big role to play here. Congress has already authorized funding for these platforms, and these platforms remain vital instruments of public diplomacy and supporting the voices of Iranians. Rather than allowing these networks to fade, we should ensure that they are used strategically to advance American foreign policy goals and support people who yearn for freedom. This means adapting to new realities, expanding digital platforms, and sharing the stories of those who fight for basic rights across the world, including in Iran. The United States does not need to outspend our adversaries to be effective. We have truth on our side, and so do our friends in Iran, and that matters. We need to ensure that that continues to be heard. We must continue to stand with the men and women who are demanding change for themselves. We must keep their stories in the light. We must continue to echo their voices, even though the political cost is so high for so many back home. We need to continue to call for the release of those imprisoned for acts of conscience. Just this week, I noted in my local hometown paper that an Iranian American who lives on Long Island, where I live, was arrested. He's a dual national, and Iran detained him when he traveled home to visit family. We need to highlight these cases. It's hostage diplomacy, in fact, and we need to continue to do that, and we can as a government. The women of Iran are showing the world what leadership looks like under impossible conditions. Their courage challenges us to match moral conviction with action, and Congress can do this by supporting Persian language media and by amplifying Iranian voices in hearings and in public forums like this today, and by insisting that human rights remain central to our diplomacy. Freedom's enemies thrive when there is a void. So let's be sure that America's voice continues to remain a source of light for those still behind bars and for the generations of Iranians who believe that their future, your future, can be free. Thank you very much.
Now you know why she was spokesperson for the U.S. government. She's going to be a great spokesman on behalf of the Iranian people as well. Thank you, Heather. Senator Booker is going to join us shortly, but before we do that, before he arrives, and to keep on time, there's a 2-minute video about the internal opposition that is led by Madam Rajavi and the NCRI, and I think it'll help provide you a bit of a flavor of the courage as well as the conviction of so many people inside Iran who are risking their lives on behalf of a free Iran. And hopefully you'll be able to see how some of their courage is playing out. So we'll show this video before we move on.
سلام دیدی من آیدا هستم از نوشهر صدای من رو از قلب ایران در زنگه میشنوید من خانم شویشی هستم و بخش از فعالیتم رو برای اون بخشیدن به مردمی که دفاع و انتقام حوادث هستن قرار میدم ما تو شاید خبرها ترس و سرکوب در حال مبارزه هستیم و از مریم به عنوان یک حامی که این مبارزه کردن می‌آموزه و اعتماد به نفس ما میده برای مقابله با دشمنان در شرایطی که ما در حال مقابله هستیم که هم خطر داریم و در حال مقابله با دشمن هستیم دوستان زیاده از من هستن که در زیر تیغ اعدام هستن گویا بابک ما از شما خواهش میکنیم که صدای ما بشیم در دنیا و اینکه هوای ما رو داشته باشیم و فعالیت ها ما رو به عنوان شورشی به رسمیت بشماریم و از همه شما ممنونم که صدای ما رو میشنوید به امید روزی که ایران آزاد بشه.
من یک کانون شورشی هستم. اگر بخوام از وضع ایران بگم، فقر، گرونی، بیکاری و ظلم و ستم آخوندا بیداد میکنه. من این وضعیت رو دیدم و فهمیدم که نمیشه ساکت نشست و باید بلند شد کاری کرد. سیمای آزادی رو دیدم، کار کانونهای شورشی رو دیدم و با خواهران مجاهد آشنا شدم. با برنامه 10 ماده خواهر مریم آشنا شدم و فهمیدم که تنها جواب ظلم آخوندا پیوستن به کانونهای شورشیه. ما زنان آخرین ضربه را به رژیم آخوندی خواهیم زد. ما یگانهای رزمی خواهران را تشکیل میدیم و این رژیم را با حمایت شما و با تلاش‌های شما در خارج از ایران سرنگون میکنیم. پس همه با هم حاضر حاضر حاضر.
You know, friends, that's just a small taste of the courage that someone like me who is aware of, you know, I follow events in Iran for a variety of reasons, not least of which is because of my current work to try to prevent foreign terrorists from using social media in the United States to incite violence and to commit acts of terror. The Iranians have proven to be very adept at circumventing the guardrails of social media. And as Heather mentioned in her excellent remarks, and as I mentioned before Senator Shaheen arrived, I wanted to put a challenge down to my Senate colleagues, when I say Senate colleagues, my Senate staff colleagues, in terms of formulating a new Iran Freedom Act. Now, I mentioned already what some of these tools could be used in order to effectuate providing more power, strength, and courage to the internal Iranian opposition. I want to make sure that you all understand the NCRI, the MEK, and almost everybody who is here today does not want to see Americans fight and die on the coasts and sands and the cities of Iran. Madam Rajavi wrote a op-ed that appeared just a few weeks ago in the Washington Times. And I just encourage you to try to look it up. It's entitled "Democracy and Stability in Iran Can Only Come from Within." And despite the fact that there are many who believe that the only way to get rid of this regime is to overthrow it with force, I happen to believe that there's many instruments of soft power that we need to use. I mentioned some of them, including provided covert intel support and foster communications networks on behalf of Iranian opposition leaders in order to strengthen internal Iranian reform and durable civil societies that will inevitably have to emerge after the overthrow of this tyrannical regime. And we need to strengthen our support for the global opposition under the NCRI. Now, I'm going to say a word about this because I've spent time in the Middle East looking into this very issue. You know, the Pahlavi dynasty was overthrown. It was one of the worst moments in U.S. foreign policy. His son, who resides in Los Angeles, pretends that he is the best answer to Iran's future. I don't believe for one second, I do not believe for one second, that the people of Iran want to restore the old monarch with all of the corruption and tyrannical rule that would replace one set of corrupt leaders with another. So those who propose to see the young Shah be reinstated on the throne, I caution you, I do not believe in my heart of hearts that the people of Iran believe that their future lies in a restoration of the monarchy, but in effect, a restoration of freedom in a democratic republic that is led by leaders who are elected and not appointed. The days of a monarchy in Iran are long past. I want to now introduce our speaker, Senator Ben Carson. Secretary Carson has been one of the most distinguished national leaders in health and human welfare, serving not only as the most distinguished pediatric surgeon in Johns Hopkins history, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, as well as a leader in the Make America make America's health again better, or so, it's MAHA, make America's health again. Make America healthy again. Got it. Sorry, you know, we Democrats sometimes don't get these things right. I assure you I'm learning, okay? I do think that one of the best things that is happening to us today is that Secretary Carson and his lovely wife are here to join us. I'd like to welcome you to the podium. Mr. Secretary, we thank you for joining our small family. We thank you for your leadership, and I know that there are hundreds of thousands of parents of children that you've cared for and children themselves that are grateful that you're here with us and making America healthy again.
Thank you so much. Candy and I are delighted to be here today. I'm very honored to be here for such an important cause as this. You know, when you think about freedom, it is something that everybody wants. It doesn't matter where they come from, doesn't matter what party they belong to or which part of the world they're in. And you can go way back through history. You look at the history of Iran, even when it was called Persia and the Medo-Persian Empire, people have still wanted the same thing, which is freedom. And I've faced many patients who wanted freedom too. You think way back to the first set of Siamese twins, Chang and Ing Bunker from North Carolina, actually originally from Thailand. That's why they're called Siamese twins. Thailand used to be called Siam, so they were Siamese twins. And they lived a pretty normal life, but they always wanted to be free, but no one could come up with any ideal for how that could be done. They even got married to 2 different women, and between them, they had 21 children. So they were pretty creative fellows too, but they couldn't figure out how to gain that freedom. And my attachment to Iran goes back to the Bijani twins. Some people may remember them, young ladies. They were joined at the head and went back and forth over many years whether they should be separated. Most people concluded that it was much too dangerous to separate them and give them that freedom they longed for. One of them wanted to be a journalist, and the other one wanted to be a lawyer. And they were extremely intelligent. And after a while, they finally said, we'll be journalists. And they met a neurosurgeon from Thailand who had actually been involved in separations before, and he convinced them that it was possible to do it. And he started putting together a team. And they asked me if I would join the endeavor, since I was probably the person who had the most experience separating conjoined twins, including the first craniopagus joined at the head that turned out completely normal. But I was still a little reluctant. But when I met those twins, I could see the fire in their eyes, the desire in their hearts, how much they wanted to be free. And they were willing to undergo all those risks, knowing that the chances were very strong that they would die. But they went through with it. And during the operation, we discovered something that was horrifying, and that was that the blood flow had changed. The direction of the blood flow had changed, and I suggested maybe we stop the operation and restudy them at that point. When I found out that they had made an agreement with the family that we wouldn't stop the operation no matter what. They would either be separated or they would die. And I said, they're going to die. And they did, unfortunately, after 53 hours of surgery. But can you imagine the desire for freedom that motivated these very intelligent young women to go through that kind of risk? And when you look at what's going on now, you look at the women who are leading the charge for bringing freedom to the Iranian people. I think it's very admirable from even the young teenage girls who refuse to wear the headgear, the hijab, because even though they know it may bring them some punishment, they do it anyway. That's a pretty amazing thing. And I think about, there's Senator Booker. If you have just a short period of time, I don't mind giving up the podium for you, Senator. Senator, if you want, you can speak, and I'll continue after you get done, because I know you have a short time period.
I thank you. Now, the Secretary was just getting rolling here, okay? Senator Booker, Mazel Tov on your marriage. And I'm so happy that you married a beautiful woman by the name of Alexis, because I named my daughter Alexis. And the fun has just begun for you, okay? I just celebrated my 45th wedding anniversary, okay? And I happen to have married a former Miss Arkansas. And so when Bill Clinton came to our wedding back in 1979, he said, I was removing one of the few natural resources that Arkansas ever had. Senator Booker is now taking Alexis away from, shall we say, her other pursuits to, shall we say, take good care of you. But most importantly, Senator Booker's now broken the hearts of thousands of women across Washington. You know, Senator, you and I have known each other, and your support for a free Iran, the fact that you take the time, the fact that your staff provides so much support to the cause of a free Iran, the fact that you're in the leadership of the Democratic Party here in the Senate, the fact that you've stood up for human rights around the world, the fact that you're an interfaith leader. For someone like me, sir, it means a great deal. And I want to welcome you here, and I know that Secretary Carson will come up afterward, but we're very, very pleased that you're here with us today, and please convey to Alexis on behalf of all of us, Mazel Tov.
All right. I thank you, everyone. Thank you. Please sit down. I never dreamed when I was growing up seeing Ben Carson. I read his books. He's such an inspiring that he would be my warm-up act. This is incredible to me that you would be so gracious to me. So I'm thankful for that. This room, I come in here annually and I get fortified. You all give me strength. And a reminder of what Martin Luther King said so profoundly, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a common garment of destiny, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are united by something. Humanity is united by common principles and common ideals and common virtues. That in the country of Iran right now, they know the sweet taste of freedom and liberty and treasure it like Americans do. They are appalled by the darkness of tyranny like Americans are. We are bound by this larger sacred journey of God's children towards that high ideal of freedom, justice, and loving your neighbor. And so walking in here, in a room full of Americans who understand the urgency that we are called by something uniting. In a time of left and right, where deepening divisions happening in this country, this room unites people. You have Democrats and Republicans, noble Americans who may have different political parties, but share that commitment, that common commitment to love. A colleague of mine, my colleague Andy Kim, who is a Korean American. His parents escaped tyranny to come to this nation He gave his maiden speech this week, and he pointed to the words above the presiding chair in the Senate. And the words over that head are words we all know. They're e pluribus unum, from many one. And he said he found something incomplete about that statement. That phrase doesn't have a verb. It's not actually necessarily a complete sentence. And so here is this new senator to the Senate that decided to do research that I'm embarrassed with multiple degrees. As my father said, boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. He actually went back and did the research. Where does that phrase originate from? And found that it was from Cicero. And he found out that it was part of a longer sentence that is a call of all the Abrahamic faiths. It says, we must love one another. We must love our neighbor, so that from the many there is one. That the verb that was missing is that commandment to love. I draw so much inspiration, not just from Iranian Americans who are such a pivotal part of the fabric of America. I'm drawing strength and inspiration from the Iranian people right now, who do not reflect in any way the tyranny of a regime bent on darkness and destruction. The Iranian people are showing such resolve, such resilience. They are showing this grit and determination to be free. God, it is people yearning to be free. My heritage as an African American, it's a people yearning to be free. My heritage as an American with European roots too, it's a people yearning to be free. I come here every year and I think I'm going to try to share some inspiration and reaffirm my commitment to a free Iran. But what you all do is you inspire me to deepen that commitment to this struggle. As I stand here before one of my former colleagues and friends, I want you to know that we stand shoulder to shoulder in the Senate in our commitment to a free Iran and to the liberation of the people of that great nation with that great history. I end with this. It is not easy. In my wife's faith, she's Jewish, they always have this saying, next year in Jerusalem, when they celebrate different events. And we come back here every year with this commitment that we will have a free Iran and hope that it's this year. It takes something to stay committed to a goal. It reminds me of generations of slaves in this country who still believed in the ideals of freedom. I want to share just this moment of American history that's one of my favorite. It's after President Lincoln finishes his second inaugural address, and he says, with malice towards none, with charity towards all. You all know this phrase. And he finishes his great speech, and he goes back to a reception, and there was a black man who was in the reception, who almost didn't get in because this was a time that many people felt that a black person shouldn't be allowed in there. The police officer at the door tried to stop him from coming in. He insisted, and it was another person that saw this black man, saw who he was able to get him into the reception. So picture a room like this, crowded with people, this tall president, still our tallest president ever, towering above everybody, sticking out, and he sees the only black person there, and he yells intentionally so everybody can hear, "There is my friend." And he goes over to his friend. As people are pulling at the president, trying to get his attention, he makes a big display out of the fact that he's going to his friend, to his equal brother, and he has a question. I want to know, he says to this black man, what you thought of my speech. What did you think of my speech? And the black man, regal in stature, humble in nature, looks at him and says, "Mr. President, you should attend to your guests." And he waves him off. He goes, "No, my friend, I want to know what you thought of my speech." Now, this would be the last time in American history these two great Americans would ever speak to each other. As you know, Lincoln would soon be assassinated. This is the last words they exchanged. Lincoln stood there, the President of the United States of America, amidst a difficult time, a time of pain and destruction, a time of hurt, and looked at this man, a former slave, by the name of Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass takes a deep breath and looks at the President of the United States, and he says, "Mr. President, it was a sacred effort, a sacred effort." My friends, what we are gathered here together for today is a sacred effort. In the history of humanity, there is no greater urgency than freedom, and no greater path to it than love. Love is not saccharine, it's not sentimentality, it's not a feeling. Love is service, love is sacrifice, love is commitment. It is a sacred call, and I am grateful. Thank you.
Well, it's hard to follow that, but we'll make a try. Talking about freedom comes in many different forms. And when I was growing up, there were a lot of people who were, let's say, not understanding about racial differences. And a lot of people said, it's impossible, you can't do certain things. But my mother was not one of those people. You talk about women who are strong. My mother came from a large rural family in Tennessee, shifted from home to home, less than a third grade education, got married when she was 13. They ended up in Detroit. She discovered that my father was a bigamist. They were divorced. And there she had the job of trying to raise 2 young sons by herself. But she believed true freedom comes with education. And she pushed and pushed for education. I was a terrible student, by the way. But she prayed for wisdom, and God gave it to her. That wisdom was to turn off the TV and make sure we read books. And I got to the point where I actually liked reading, because between the covers of those books, even though we were very poor, I could read about all kinds of things, about all kinds of very successful people, including Frederick Douglass, who Cory Booker was just talking about. And it freed me, it freed my imagination to really start thinking about what I could do and not what I couldn't do. And I went from an E student to an A student. And it changed the course of my life in a very dramatic way. But that was done by a mother who many people criticized. And they said, you can't make boys stay in the house and read books. They'll grow up and they'll hate you. And I used to overhear them, and I would say, Mother, you know they're right. But we still had to do it anyway. And I think she got the last laugh, because one son became a brain surgeon and the other became a rocket scientist. So I think maybe she might have known what she was talking about, and that courage was leading to a special place. But, you know, so many people thought about this country in its beginnings that freedom was impossible. We were fighting against the British Army, the most powerful military force on earth, and it looked impossible. But that determination and that courage and that faith led to our freedom. But then, not too many years after that, we were involved in another war with the same power, the War of 1812. And there we came to the last battle. The British had burned down the White House and several parts of Washington, D.C. It was looking pretty grim. They sailed up to the Chesapeake Bay, came up on Fort McHenry in Baltimore, and they said, take down that flag. There was a big American flag flying. And General Armistead said, I'm not taking that flag down. They said, we will destroy you if you don't take it down. All night long, bombs bursting in air. It was a terrible battle. Francis Scott Key was on that ship. He was very discouraged about the fledgling country. But as the sun began to rise and the dust began to clear, he saw the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The flag was still there. It was still waving. And that was the beginning of the end of the War of 1812. We won that battle. The British eventually became our friends. But that's what courage, faith, and determination can do, no matter what the odds look like. And, you know, I know many Iranians. I've worked with many Iranians, mostly in academic settings, extremely smart people. When I was a junior resident at Johns Hopkins in neurosurgery, our chief resident, Jeanne Arabi, was Iranian. He was one of the most fantastic surgeons ever. I learned a lot from him. But what I've learned from all of those Iranian people that I've known is they're just like us in America. They like and they want peace and freedom. And today they're facing a brutal regime. But it didn't start with this regime. It actually started way back in the 60s and 70s with the Shah of Iran, who seemed to be doing a lot of great things for them economically, brought automobiles back, finances increased, built up the oil empire. But then he started nationalizing everything, which sometimes is justified, but what was not justified is the brutality upon his enemies. And I think it was that brutal regime which got people accustomed to the kind of tyranny that subsequently found itself in Iran. And the people don't like it. And they're willing to fight, but they probably could use some help. And we can ignore what's going on in Iran, say it's not our problem. But you have to recognize that if you ignore tyranny, it spreads. And eventually, it will catch up with you. So when we tolerate tyranny anywhere, we're paving the way for tyranny in our own backyard. And it's something that we have to remember. And we have to realize that working together makes all the difference. And I'll end with another conjoined twin story. There was a set of conjoined twins from Europe, and they were joined at the top of the head. And I said, you know, I've done a number of these, and I'm at the #1 neurosurgery department in the world at Johns Hopkins. I said, we've got people here who are the best there are with vascular neurosurgery, with skull-based neurosurgery, with tumor neurosurgery, with all kinds of parts. Why should I do that whole operation? I recruited 17 other neurosurgeons. We had a team of 18 and scheduled the surgery in such a way that when we got to the part where they were the expert in the world, we would shift to teams. We were literally 10 hours ahead of schedule. That's what happens when you don't worry about who gets the credit, but you understand what the goal is. And our goal right now is freedom for the Iranian people. Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your distinguished, excellent remarks. Spoken from the heart, spoken like a physician, and more importantly, inspiring to young Iranians who are going to be seeing this. I want to close this forum by, first of all, expressing on behalf of the NCRI and the MAK their gratitude for your coming near and far to be with us today. I want to thank Madam Rajavi and those who are with her in Europe for their leadership, courage, and conviction, and the sacrifices that they and those who support a global Iranian opposition make every day on behalf of freedom in Iran. The cause for Iran is very important to me personally. I was raised in Israel, and I've lost 2 close family members to that axis of resistance. I lost my brother, I lost my mother, and in the 2025 attack by Hamas, I lost my nephew. I am just one example of the sacrifices that so many family members have made, whether you're Jew or whether you're Muslim or Christian, to the terror of this regime. Right now, we have homework to do. My son is joining me in this cause to help overthrow this regime. My family is proud of Madam Rajavi, the NCRI, and have encouraged me as a Democrat who works across the aisle, who is proud of his legacy of working for Senator Kennedy, whose son Patrick Kennedy is deeply involved with us and was just involved in a forum just a few weeks ago here in the Senate. We have homework to do. We can't let this opportunity pass from our fingertips. It's not enough for either the Trump administration or for members of Congress to advocate for a free Iran. We've got to give the Iranian people and their global opposition leadership the tools to accomplish that objective. What I believe is possible is to give them the tools. We did it during the Cold War. We can give the opposition support. When the Obama administration stood on the sidelines, when the Iranian people revolted, I was revolted by our failure to even provide the oral support that the people deserved. When you steal a page from the Helsinki Accords and you realize that everything that I'm suggesting here in an Iran Freedom Act is possible, I encourage you to urge this administration, your friends in the administration, to realize and accept the fact that providing the Iranian opposition the tools to achieve freedom would not put Americans in harm's way. Give them the tools. That's all I suggest. That's all I believe is necessary. Give them the hope, give them the voices, give them the inspiration. Walk out of this knowing that in a few days, the Jewish Festival of Lights begins. And when I light the 8 candles on my menorah, those candles will be light that will glow also for the people of Iran. I think that, as Cory said so well and so eloquently, next year in Tehran, it may not happen, but we can help make it happen. And we should make it happen. And so thank you for being here. I want to thank our distinguished speakers, Roy, Heather, Jim, Ben, and his lovely wife. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the senators for being here. Thank you, most importantly, to my Senate staff colleagues and to the senators. We will hopefully return again in another year, but at that point in time, hopefully, an Iran Freedom Act will have been introduced. Senate Resolution 145 will have achieved its objective of providing the people in Ashraf the freedom they deserve, and we'll make those goddamn mullahs pay. Thank you. Thank you very much.